The Shiur that Rav Drukman gave the first day of Pesach, Tavshin Hey, starts on source 4, Yahushua, Perek Dalet, Pasuk Yud Tet, followed by Perek Hey, Yud, and Yud Beit. Va'am alu min Yarden, v'asur l'chodesh rishon, v'yachanu b'gilgal v'kitzei mizrach Yericho. And the nation came up from the Jordan on the 10th day of the first month, and they camped in Gilgal at the eastern edge of Yericho. V'yachanu b'nei Yisrael b'Gilgal, and b'nei Yisrael camped in Gilgal. V'yasu et Pesach ba'arbasar liyom l'chodesh be'erev b'arvot Yericho, and they made Pesach on the 14th day of the month in the evening in the plains of Yericho. V'yachlu me'avor haaretz b'macharat Pesach, and they ate from the produce of the land from the day following Pesach, matzot v'kolui, matzot and burnt grain, parched grain, be'etzem hayom hazeh, on this day, v'yishbot haman mimacharat be'ochlam me'avor haaretz, and the man literally rested from the day following that they ate from the produce of the land. V'le'od haya od livnei Yisrael man, and the Bnei Yisrael did not have any more man. V'yachlu mitvuot eretz Canaan b'shna hahi, and they ate from the produce of eretz Canaan in that year. First of all, when did the man stop falling, and when did they stop eating it? And secondly, you see that they ate in that year. They didn't eat in the following years from the produce of the land. They only ate in that year from the produce of the land. What's going on? There are other questions here that we will get to. Those are the first things that one should pay attention to when one looks at these psukim. Going back to source 1, in Shemot, Perek Tet Zayin, Pasuk Lamed Hey, Bnei Yisrael achlu et haman, and the children of Israel ate the man, arba'im shana, for 40 years, ad bo amel eretz noshavet, until they came to the settled land, et haman achlu ad bo amel katzei eretz Canaan, and they ate the man until they came to the edge of eretz Canaan. Now, this seems to contradict what it says in Yahushua, because in Yahushua it says that they ate the man until Pesach, and only once they started eating the produce of the land. They came to the edge of Eretz Canaan on Zion Adar. So this is a month earlier. So what happened? And we know that the man did not, in fact, couldn't be kept, right? If you tried keeping the man overnight, it would rot and so on, except for Shabbat, where it would keep for Shabbat, but no other times. The Gemara is aware of this problem in Kedushin, Lamed Chet Amud Aleph. Bnei Yisrael achlu et haman arba'im shana, and Bnei Yisrael ate the man for 40 years, ad bo amel eretz noshavet, until they came to the settled land. Et haman achlu ad bo amel katzei eretz Canaan, and they ate the man until they came to the edge of the land of Canaan. Efshar lomar ad bo amel eretz noshavet. The Gemara says it's impossible to say that they ate it until they came to the settled land. Shekvar nemar el eretz katzei eretz Canaan, to the edge of the land of Canaan. And the Ever Hayarden, Moab and Ammon, were also settled. So we have a contradiction here. When they entered Ammon and Moab, which became the territory of Gad, Reuven, and Chatzi Shevet Menashe, they were already in a settled land. However, they weren't yet to Eretz Canaan. V'yefshar lomar el katzei Eretz Canaan, and you cannot say it to the edge of the land of Canaan. Reik var ne'amar ad boam el Eretz noshavet, because it already said until they came to a settled land. Ha-ketzad, how does this work? B'shiva ba'adar meit Moshe upaskuman milared. On the 7th of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu died, and the man stopped coming down. Vayu mistapkin miman shebekelehem ad shisha sar b'nisan, and they were able to be supplied by the man that was in there that they had stored until the 16th day of Nisan. Rashi explains this, El Eretz Noshavet, Me'ever Yarden ve'elach, from the other side of the Jordan, She Chashuva mi Eretz Sichon va'og, because this is thought of as the land of Sichon and Og. We see that Moshe Rabbeinu desired to enter into it. V'karei la tova, and it was also called good. Kitzei Eretz Canaan. What is the edge of Eretz Canaan? Arvot Moab. This is the plains of Moab. Shesham meit Moshe. Moshe died there. She Eretz Emori, which is the land of the Amorite. Ve'al Sfata Yarden, the edge of the Jordan. Shu Kitzei Knisat Eretz Canaan. This is the edge from which you enter into Eretz Canaan. So we see that these are different places that the Chumash is talking about. Tosfot explains, source 3. Ad Boam el Eretz Noshavet, until they came to the settled land. Perish B'Kuntris, Rashi explains, Hainu me'ever liyarden ve'elech dechashuva me'eretz Sichon va'og ad Boam el Kitzei Eretz Canaan Hainu al Sfata Yardem shu Kitzei Eretz Canaan Vainu Eretz Sichon va'og. He quotes Rashi exactly that from the edge of the Jordan onward is thought of as the land of, meaning to the east, not to the west. From the Jordan to the west is the land of Sichon and Og, until they came to the edge of the land of Canaan, which is the border of the Jordan, which is the end of the land of Canaan, which is the end of the land of Sichon and Og. V'yesh mefarshim ibcha. Some people turn it around. Eretz Noshavet, hainu Eretz Sichon va'og. That the settled land was not Canaan, but the land of Sichon and Og. V'karei le Noshavet lefish krova lemidbar. It was called the settled land because it's close to the desert, which is unsettled. Umafka mimidbar, and it goes out to the desert. V'havya yishuv, and it is settled. V'kitzei Eretz Canaan, hainu sof Eretz Canaan. Kitzei Eretz Canaan is the end of Eretz Canaan. So exactly which points are which becomes the problem here. Just a second. The Alshich on Yehoshua says, V'yishvot haman mimacharat, and the man stopped on the following day, Ba'achlam me'avor haaretz, when they stopped eating the produce of the land. Roy Lasim Lev, the Alshich says it is fitting to pay attention to the fact, Lama tala shvita taman ve'achilat me'avor haaretz. Why did we say that the end of the man is dependent upon the produce of the land of Israel? Va'od amru, and not only this, but they said, V'achlu mitvuot eretz Canaan b'shna hahi. They ate from the produce of the land of Canaan on that day. Ki alo mikol sheken she'achlua b'shar hashanim. All the more so didn't they continue to eat it in all the other years? U'mahu amru b'shna hahi. Why does it say in that year? V'yitechen asa lehem hu yitbarach b'zei kasher asa ba'amud eish ve'anan. It is fitting to say that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did for them in this, in giving them the land, the food of Canaan, just like he did with the pillars of fire and cloud. In the desert they had a pillar of fire at night and a cloud during the day. Ki lo haya mash amud hanan ad ba amud ha'esh, because the pillar of cloud did not leave until the pillar of fire arrived. Kach lo hushbat haman ad achlam me'avor haaretz. So too the man did not stop until they started eating from the produce of the land. V'hu ki biyom siluk Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom chadal matar haman min hashmayim. On the day that Moshe Rabbeinu died, that is when the man stopped falling, stopped coming. Me'asher laktu biyomahu achlu ad yom. And from that, they continued to eat until, just a second, there's a problem with the print here. I have to find it in the other source. Ad yom yudvav b'Nisan, they continued eating it till the 16th of Nisan. V'hinei lo yivatzer me'hatzavua barvot Moab shayu yecholim le'achol bein siluk Moshe liyud vav b'Nisan. And they did not receive any more man from the time that Moshe Rabbeinu died and the man stopped until the 16th of Nisan. Ela sheratzah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu desired Shiavo mikodesh lekodesh, that they would go from holy to holy. V'yado chlam me'avur haaretz Canaan, shiu b'yud vav b'Nisan, achar ha'omer, birech et haman, shiyitkayem le'echol mimenu ad ochlam kvar me'avur haaretz. So there was a special bracha in the man that it lasted until the 17th of Nisan, when they could bring the korban to Omer and began eating from the produce of the land. V'achar kach hushbat, and after that it was finished, it rested, so to speak. V'zehu v'yishbot haman mimacharat be'ochlam me'avur haaretz, and this is why it says the man rested the day following that they began eating the produce of the land. The zehu lo haya od livnei Yisrael. Well, and the man, they never had more to Bnei Yisrael. Man lo yarad, lo nemar. It doesn't say the man didn't come down. Ela lo haya, it didn't exist. Ki masei haya lehem miyom siluk Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom. Because they had a special occurrence from the time that Moshe Rabbeinu left. Lo nitkayim od lazun mimenu lam. They were no longer able to receive the man once Moshe Rabbeinu got it, and once they had the Pesach, they were no longer able to eat it. V'lama haya hadavar hazeh, and why would this occur? Shelo hushbat v'nitkayam al derech nes, and that it didn't rest, it wasn't destroyed, and it continued to exist through a miracle. Kedei Tzorech Kol Yisrael Arba'im Yom, and there was enough of it for all of Israel for 40 days, not like Shabbos where there's enough for 2 days, but there's enough for 40 days. Ma shelaktu b'yom echad, what they gathered in one day. Halo hu she'al yidei kach nimtza ki v'yochlu mitzvot eretz Canaan b'shana hahi shenichnesu mikdusha taman v'lechem haaretz, because they entered from the sanctity of the man directly into the sanctity of the land. V'lo achlu b'shana hahi beini uveini midigan arvot Moav, and they did not eat between the produce of Eretz Yisrael and the man anything from the produce of the fields of Moab. So they went directly from the man to the produce of Eretz Yisrael. But we have to understand why this would be important. And the Chesed Lavram explains, Hinei yesh lakshot, lama be'eretz Yisrael yigra mimenu haman haruchani. Why in Eretz Yisrael would they be limited? Would they be no longer have the spiritual man? Man is spiritual food as well as physical food. Why should they no longer have this spiritual support when they enter Eretz Yisrael? V'yesh lomar, and there is to say, Ki atam lezehu ki b'midbar ein perotehem kedai lekabelat ruchniyoteha shel hakadusha. That when they are in the desert, their fruit is not fitting to accept the spiritualness of sanctity. Ki ein guf tamei nase kli lekabel ruchaniyut hakadusha, because the impure vessel cannot accept spiritual sanctity. Ve'alken, and therefore, Natan lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu mehen man hashemayim. Therefore, God gave to them the man from the heavens. Amnam, but Perot Eretz Yisrael hem al yidei hakadusha. But the fruit of Eretz Yisrael is sanctified. Ve'eten ruchaniyut ha'yu roi el haman, and it gave them the spirituality that it was fit for them to have from the man. It labesh beperot Kedoshim Hahem. It was dressed in those holy fruits. V'im ken lo haya man b'Eretz Yisrael ki im b'midbar. Therefore, they did not have the man in Eretz Yisrael, but in the desert. The food that when Bnei Yisrael were being prepared for their spiritual destiny, they had to only eat food that had a certain spiritual level. And the fruit of Chutz La'aretz cannot accept, because it's impure. Chutz La'aretz is tamei. It couldn't accept the spirituality, and therefore the only way for Bnei Yisrael to grow spiritually and in sanctity is to have the man min hashmayim, the manna from heaven. However, in Eretz Yisrael, the fruits are sanctified. They can accept spirituality, and therefore once Bnei Yisrael entered Eretz Yisrael, they no longer needed this spiritual gift. When we look in Vayikra, we see a very interesting thing concerning Shemitah. This is, of course, a Shemitah year. Deber el Bnei Yisrael, speak to Bnei Yisrael, v'amarta lehem, and say to them, Ki tavo el haaretz asher ani noten lechem, when they enter the land that I will give them, v'shavtem haaretz Shabbat LaHashem. You will have a Shemitah for God. Sheish shanim tizra sadecha, for 6 years you will plant your field. The Sheish shanim tizmor karmecha, for 6 years you will prune your vineyard. V'yasafta tvuota, and you will gather the produce. Now, this sounds reversed. First, you should work the fields and the vineyards for 6 years, and then you should have a Shemitah. But that's not what it says. It says, when you enter the land, you have a Shemitah. Then you work for 6 years. The Chatam Sofer, in his drasha on Parshas Bahar, notes this problem. Ki tavo el haaretz asher ani noten lechem, v'shavta haaretz Shabbat LaHashem. When you enter the land that I will give you, and the land will rest the Shabbos to God. Tahavelei lahatchil sheish shanim tizra, uvashana hashvi tishbot. It should say, for 6 years you will sow your field, and the 7th year the land will end. Not only this, here it says Shabbos to God, Ubashna Hashvit Shabbat Shabbaton Yeh La'aretz. And then later it says in the 7th year a Shabbat Shabbaton, a double Sabbath you will have for the land. V'yesh Lamar T'biyosher L'Yisrael Ki miyad bo'am le'eretz Yisrael lo tosifa aretz teit kocha hagashmiut lehem. When Bnei Yisrael entered Eretz Yisrael, the land could no longer give its physical strength to them. Kim shvat Eloah mimal, but only the bounty from God above. He tushpa al haaretz, lo tzitzimcha, kan man shebimidbar, and it will give out its produce like it's similar to that which the man sprouted for them in the desert. Vimkan amar, and therefore it says, Basaram shmiyad bevoam el haaretz tishvot haaretz Shabbat LaHashem, and therefore they were told, they were given the news that immediately upon their entry into the land must rest for a Shabbos for God. Ki lo tosif teit kocha hagashmi, it will no longer give its physical force, kamo adata, like it had until now. Elakol hashesh shanim yeh kol perotah hakodesh, chelek Eloah mima'al. But for all 6 years, its fruit that it gives will be sanctified with a portion of God from above. Ubashna shvit yeh Shabbat Shabbaton, and on the 7th year it will be a Shabbat Shabbaton. Kafel yeh Shabbat, it will be a double Sabbath. Gam la'oto haShabbaton, also for that Shabbat. So you see something very interesting. Fruit in Eretz Yisrael always has sanctity. There is always something special to eating the fruit of Eretz Yisrael. But, much more than this, on the sabbatical year it has a double level of Kedusha. So you're getting a double portion of it. Now, when they entered Eretz Yisrael, and it wasn't fruit that had been grown, because Eretz Yisrael is not sanctified until Bnei Yisrael enter it. Therefore, what had been grown there had no sanctity to it. However, by creating a sabbatical year, that making the first year that they enter a Shnat Shemitah, therefore it has the Kedusha of Shvit, so it has a regular level of Kedusha. They will have now the first year, which is a Shemitah year, which will have a regular year level of Kedusha attached to it, one level of Kedusha attached to it. The next 6 years, when they work the land, when Bnei Yisrael work the land, it will have a one level of Kedusha to it. When the second Shemitah year, the 8th year after they enter Israel arrives, then it will have a Shabbat Shabbaton, a double level of sanctity to it. The Tur, Nora Chaim says, brings a very interesting thing. V'yesh omrim, and there are some people say in the bracha Achat Mein Shalosh Shri Kol Alam Echiyah, V'nochal mi pirya v'nisba mituva, that we should eat its fruit and we should be sanctified and we should be satiated with its goodness. Ve'ein lo omro. But the Torah says one should not say it. She'ein lachmod haaretz b'shvil pirya v'tova. One should not desire the land for its fruit and its goodness. Ela l'kayim mitzvot utluva, but only to fulfill the mitzvot that are dependent upon the land. The Bach disagrees with this, and he says as follows. Tema, this is a wonder. Halo kedushat haaretz hanishbat ba mikedushat haaretz elyona. Is not the sanctity of Eretz Yisrael dependent upon or comes from the sanctity of the upper land, meaning the spiritual land? He nishpat gam beperot shionkim knushat shchina. She is also subject to the fruit that derives its sustenance from the divine presence. Hashochenet b'kerev aretz, and that this dwells in the midst of the land. Ve'alken, and therefore, nechash anu machnisim bebracha zu. Therefore, it is good that we say in this bracha, v'nochal mipirya, v'nispa mituva, that we eat its fruit and that we're satiated from its goodness. Ki be'achilat piroteha anu nizonim mikdushat shechina, because when we eat the fruit of Eretz Yisrael, we are sustained by the sanctity of the divine presence, umitarata, and its purity, v'nishba mituva, and we are satiated by the goodness of the Shechina. I suppose this could be thought of as an advertisement for Carmel wines. The Chasam Sofer and Chulin, Daf Kufmen Beis Amud Aleph, says as follows: V'inei shevach Eretz Yisrael zavat chalav v'dvash. And behold, the praise of Eretz Yisrael as it is a land flowing with milk and honey. Honey, of course, is date honey. Im shuk pshuto bli safek. And if this is to be in its simple meaning, without a doubt. Mikol makom zeh hator mor al kedushat haaretz uperoteav. This is telling us about the sanctity of the land and its fruit. Ki hem molidim kedusha b'nefesh ha'ochel, because they cause sanctity to be born in the soul of the one that eats them. Umosif ahava v'dveikut b'Hashem, and they add love and clinging to God. Ki haTorah habrura bli siag poselet nikra dvash chalav tachat lashonech, because the Torah without any dross or gloss is called the honey and dew and milk that is under your tongue. Ki perot Eretz Yisrael, because they are the fruit of Eretz Yisrael. V'leremez l'davar zvat chalav v'davash sof they tevot otiot Shabbat. When you look at the last letters of them, they spell out Shabbat. The last letter of Davash is Shin. The last letter of Chalav is Beit. The last letter of Savat is Tav, Shvat. Ki b'chol ma'achlei kedusha k'mo se'udat Shvat. All eating the sanctified fruits of Eretz Yisrael is the same as eating as acquiring the sanctity of a Shabbat meal. This was a very brief summary, basically, of the Shiur that Drukman gave about the importance of eating the fruits of Israel, about the importance of being attached to the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael, something that cannot be acquired in any other place.